That's a long introduction, but I can definitely craft a compelling, engaging opening that sets the stage for your video. Here's a natural, human-centric start. The rain poured down in steady sheets, blurring the neon lights of the city as Mark struggled to keep his umbrella from flipping inside out. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, clung to his hand, her tiny fingers cold against his own. The weight of the world sat heavy on his shoulders. Unpaid bills, long shifts at the diner, and the ever-present fear of failing his little girl. Mark had never imagined life would turn out like this. A single father, doing his best to keep food, on the table after losing his wife in a tragic accident. Every day was a battle, and tonight, as he hurried through the storm, it felt like he was losing. "Daddy? I'm cold," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I know." "Sweetheart," Mark said, squeezing her hand. "We're almost home." But home wasn't much. A tiny one-bedroom apartment with a leaky roof and barely enough space for them both. He'd been trying to save up for a better place, but every penny went toward rent, food, and daycare. And now, with his hours cut, at work, even that was slipping through his fingers. He didn't notice the black SUV pulling up beside him until the window rolled down. "Excuse me?" a woman's voice called out. Mark turned, shielding Lily from the rain. The woman inside was elegant, poised. Someone who didn't belong on these streets at this hour. But it was her eyes that caught him off guard. There was kindness in them. Understanding. "Do you need a ride?" she asked. Mark hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger wasn't something he was used to. But before he could respond, Lily spoke up. "Daddy, it's cold," she said again, her lips trembling. The woman in the car seemed to make up her mind in an instant. She opened the door. "Please," she said, "let me help." And just like that, Mark's life took a turn he never saw coming. "Would you like me to continue developing this further into a longer piece?" Mark hesitated for a long moment, his instincts telling him to decline. Accepting help, even in the smallest way, wasn't something he was used to. But then he looked down at Lily. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her little fingers gripping his hand tightly. She was shivering. He sighed, adjusting his grip on the worn-out umbrella. "Are you sure?" he asked the woman in the SUV. She smiled warmly. "Absolutely." Mark helped Lily into the back seat, her small frame sinking into the plush leather. He hesitated before getting in himself, still wary, but the warmth of the car was a welcome relief from the biting rain. As he settled in, he glanced at the woman in the driver's seat. She was dressed elegantly, but not in an extravagant way. There was a quiet confidence about her, something familiar, but distant. "Where can I take you?" she asked, adjusting the heat settings. Mark hesitated. It felt strange to be sitting in this car, feeling the comfort of it when his own life was so far from anything luxurious. "Just downtown," he said, "near 6th Street. The woman nodded and started driving. The silence stretched between them for a moment before Lily, ever curious, spoke up. "You're really nice," she said, peering at the woman with wide eyes. The woman chuckled. "Well, thank you." She glanced at Mark. "I'm Melania, by the way." Mark froze. It clicked all at once. The elegance, the familiarity. Melania Trump. His heart pounded. He had seen her on television, in magazines, but never in his life did he imagine he'd be sitting in a car with her. He felt an odd mix of emotions, gratitude, confusion, even a little bit of disbelief. Why was she here? And why was she helping them? He cleared his throat, trying to act normal. "I appreciate this. Really," she smiled. "It's no trouble," Lily giggled from the back seat. "You talk fancy," she said, swinging her legs. Melania laughed. "And you are adorable." Mark felt himself relax slightly. Maybe this was just a good person doing a good thing. Maybe for once life was throwing him a little kindness. As they drove through the rain-soaked streets, Melania glanced at him. "If you don't mind me asking, what's your story?" Mark swallowed hard. He didn't like talking about it, but something about her made it easy. Maybe it was the warmth in her voice, or the fact that she had already done more for him and Lily than most people in his life. I lost my wife 2 years ago, he said, his voice quieter than he intended. Car accident. It's just been me and Lily since then. Melania's expression softened. I'm so sorry. He nodded, staring out the window. We get by, but it's hard. I work at a diner, but they cut my hours and rent is going up. Some nights I don't know how I'm going to keep things together. He let out a breath. But I have to. For her. Melania glanced in the rearview mirror at Lily, who was now humming softly, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. You're a good father, she said. Mark let out a short laugh, shaking his head. I don't know about that. I do, she said simply. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the car engine, the soft patter of rain against the windows, the quiet breathing of Lily, it all felt strangely peaceful. Then Melania spoke again. Would you be open to some help? Mark turned to her sharply. What do you mean? She kept her eyes on the road, her voice gentle but firm. I mean, I want to help. I know how hard life can be, and I know that sometimes all it takes is someone believing in you, someone giving you an opportunity. Mark tensed. He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her that he had it handled. But the truth was, he didn't. And the way she said it, it didn't feel like pity. It felt real. What? Kind of help? He asked cautiously. Melania smiled. Let's start with dinner. Mark blinked. Dinner? She nodded. You and Lily, my treat. Lily perked up from the back seat. Pizza? She asked excitedly. Melania laughed. Pizza it is. Mark felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just about the food. It was about what it represented. Someone reaching out, someone willing to stand beside him when life felt too heavy to carry alone. He let out a breath and, for the first time in a long while, let himself say the words. Okay, but neither of them knew that this small act of kindness was only the beginning. As they pulled into a small, cozy Italian restaurant on the quieter side of town, Mark still couldn't shake the surreal feeling of the night. Just hours ago, he had been struggling through the rain, dreading how he would stretch the last few dollars in his pocket. Now, he was stepping out of a warm car, holding his daughter's hand, about to have dinner with Melania Trump. The restaurant had a welcoming glow with the scent of fresh-baked bread and melted cheese filling the air. Lily's face lit up as they walked inside, her little fingers tightening around Mark's. This is fancy, she whispered, eyes wide. Mark smiled. A little bit, yeah. Melania led them to a booth in the corner, away from the crowd. The waiter greeted her with polite familiarity, and Mark got the sense that this wasn't the first time she had come here. As they settled in, menus in hand, Lily bounced excitedly. I want a big pizza, she announced. With extra cheese, Melania chuckled. Then that's what we'll get. Mark shook his head, still feeling like he was in some strange dream. I don't even know how to thank you for this, he admitted. Melania tilted her head, a thoughtful look crossing her face. You don't have to. Kindness doesn't need repayment. The words settled deep in Mark's chest. It wasn't often that people did something for him without expecting something in return. It had been a long time since he had felt seen, truly seen, as more than just a struggling father trying to get by. As dinner went on, the conversation flowed easily. Mark found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected, talking about his dreams, his struggles, and the things he wished he could give Lily. Melania listened, really listened, without judgment or empty reassurances. Then, just as they were finishing up, she spoke. Mark, I have a question for you. He raised an eyebrow. Okay? She leaned forward slightly. If you could do anything, if money and circumstances weren't in the way, what would you want for you and Lily? Mark hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. He had spent so long surviving, he had forgotten what it felt like to dream. I want a stable life for her, he said slowly. A home where she doesn't have to worry about moving all the time, A job where I can actually be there for her instead of working all night. Just a chance to breathe. Melania nodded, her expression unreadable. Then, after a moment, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small card. I have a friend who owns a business. He's always looking for hard-working people, she said, sliding it across the table. It's a good job, stable, with benefits. I don't know if it's exactly what you want, but it could be a start. Mark stared at the card, disbelief washing over him. This wasn't just a meal. This was an opportunity. His throat tightened. Melania, I can't just... You can, she interrupted gently. You deserve a chance, Mark. Take it. For the first time in a long time, Mark felt something shift inside him. Hope. Lily yawned, leaning against his arm, her belly full and her heart happy. Mark looked at her, then back at Melania. Thank you, he said, his voice raw with emotion. I don't even have words, she smiled. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When you're in a position to help someone else, pass it on. Mark swallowed hard and nodded. I will. As they stepped back out into the night, the rain had stopped. The air was cool, fresh, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Mark wasn't just trying to survive, he was looking ahead. Because sometimes one act of kindness was all it took to change everything.